Hey guys, Brian with Cajun Cardboard coming at you from the great state of Louisiana. And I don't do this often enough, but we're going to look at card prices and a couple of cards in particular and compare apples to apples for four ultra-modern prospects. I decided to choose the four young prospects that ended the 2024 NBA season probably highest on the radar, or at least getting the most attention. Luka Doncic, who crashed in the NBA Finals against probably a significantly better team, in my opinion. Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, of course, the dynamic duo for the new Boston Celtics world champions. And then Anthony Edwards, who I think got a ton of talk when he made his run through the playoffs. And of course, everybody's season comes to an end in a negative fashion, except for one team. And that team this year was the Boston Celtics. So that's what today's video is about. We're going to look at the indexes of those four players. We're going to look at the base cards of those four players. We're going to look at the silver prism of those four players. And do you think you know who's performing the best? Is it consistent? Is there any irregularities? Is there any room for what the people who try to sound smart call arbitrage? That's what today's video is about. Hope you guys enjoy. If you guys are looking to buy sports cards, basketball cards, football cards, baseball cards, comic books, memorabilia, do what I do. Use the Fanatics Marketplace. Just make sure you use the affiliate link that's located in this YouTube description at the very top or the QR code that's attached. All right, here we go. Let's, I can go in any order here, and you guys know I'm not the most organized dude, and this is going to be pretty organic. I haven't really drawn any conclusions, and sort of that's why I hit record, just start talking, and then we'll figure it out together. And maybe there's no aha gotcha, investment theory here, but if you needed to dump $10,000 into a one of these four players, let's say you had to, right? What kind of cool game would that be? Somebody gives you 10 grand, you got to go buy one of these four guys: Tatum, Doncic, Jaylen, or Ant. Who would you put your money in right now? We're going to look at the base Prism PSA 10 prices. We're going to look closely at the silver Prism PSA 10 prices. Not that I would put my money in any of those, but I think we tend to forget that 95% of the hobby is swimming in those waters when it comes to investing. This is an investor-centric video. Yeah, I know I'm always talking about Jordan 90 stuff and Cajun Eternity and holding cards, and people are talking about taking cards to the grave, and I often have true OG collectors on the channel that would never sell their cards under any circumstances. Well, not today. Today is a flipper's delight. Today is a basketball card. We're gonna take a time machine back to 2021, where flipping and short-term investing and COVID and cards tripling in 2 weeks was a thing. And we're gonna look at these cards purely from an investor standpoint, but also with an eye on where these players' NBA futures tend to go. So I want to do it this way. Let's start by looking at the index. And as always, I've got Card Ladder pulled up. We're going to ignore the graphs because you can't tell much. Here's what I've got. I've got Anthony Edwards, Jaylen Brown, Luka Doncic, Jason Tatum, and then just ultra-modern basketball generally, right? Because I consider these guys ultra-modern basketball. And then I've got it sorted by percentage change over here in this column over the last 3 months. So that's going to include all of the playoffs, okay? Pretty much. So Anthony Edwards, far and away, and this is all their cards in Card Ladder. And in Card Ladder, remember, we're dealing with indexes. There's 215 cards in the Anthony Edwards index. There's only 59 for Jaylen Brown. So his index is going to be a little bit skewed because it's going to be primarily National Treasures and Prism and maybe some Optic and Select stuff in there. So really, typical chromium stuff. Anthony Edwards, the breadth of his index is a little bit bigger. Doncic is massive, right? We got tons of Doncic stuff in here. Jaylen Brown's going to be almost exclusively as rookie stuff too. So that's another thing. Always when you're comparing indexes, don't just look at a number and say Anthony Edwards outperformed Jaylen Brown. Well, we don't really know because you got to look at the constituent parts of that index. An index is just an amalgamation of a bunch of different types of cards. The bigger the number, the more robust the number in your index. Obviously, the more reliable the data will be as far as taking high end, low end, autos, sticker autos, all this kind of different stuff. Low low-end, high-end, base, prism, silver, elite, whatever, etc. Tatum is somewhere in between, Jaylen Brown and Doncic, similar to the Anthony Edwards index with 256 cards. Again, remember, we're not really considering 256 Tatum cards. If you got a prism 10, prism 9, Prism 10, Prism 9, Prism 8, that's considered 3 cards for index purposes. But when we look at just the index, and again, given all that I just said, for the last 3 months, Anthony Edwards is the best performing of the 4 players. The Ultra Modern is about flat. Luka Doncic over 3 months is about flat. Tatum is a disaster, and then Anthony Edwards and Jaylen Brown are flourishing. And if we're talking about cards in particular, is this a surprise to you guys? Did you think Jaylen Brown might be the highest performing? I honestly did, simply because I thought Jaylen was completely off the radar. And then the guy shows up, he kicks Tatum's ass and wins Eastern Conference Finals, the Larry Bird Trophy, and wins Eastern Conference Finals MVP. And then he kicks Tatum's ass in the finals, although some people would disagree, and gets Conference Finals MVP. That is a huge blow to Tatum's legacy. And again, there's a lot of meat left on the bone. There's a lot of tread left on the tire for Jaylen and Tatum's career. They're both young bucks that are just getting to their prime. And again, the Celtics are loaded, so there might be more titles in their future. But what we do know is, we had to, Steph Curry, we had to listen to, well, he never won a Finals MVP, even though he had all these rings, he had all these MVPs, he had all these accolades, greatest three-point shooter of all time. Steph Curry, the great Steph Curry, and Tatum is nowhere near the Steph Curry class. He is not in Steph Curry's class. At no point in time now, then, or ever will Jason Tatum ever be considered the best player in the world. He does not have that in him. So if Steph Curry had to deal with that moniker, that albatross around his neck, that red flag, that just glaring deficiency of never won a Finals MVP, Tatum's gonna have to deal with that. That's what this whole offseason is gonna be about. Now, I don't think Tatum's a top 5 player in the NBA. I think he's somewhere in the 5 to 10 range, maybe 5 to 12 range. That's just me personally. You guys may disagree. I don't, and I probably should have led with this. I own maybe 3 Anthony Edwards cards. I own 2 Luka Doncic cards. I used to own thousands of Jaylen Brown cards because I thought he was the man and he was the best investment. And I did very well on that investment because, when I did it, right? And then I own no Jason Tatum cards. So right now I own maybe a total of 5 cards of these 4 players. So certainly I have no dog in this hunt, as they say in South Louisiana. This is just me looking at some numbers. But I do think that Jason Tatum this offseason is going to hear, didn't get Finals MVP, is he even the best player on his team, all of that stuff, and we'll see if he's got that dog. We'll see if he comes back next season and chases the regular season MVP award. It's going to be tough to do on a team like that because they're so balanced, so well-rounded, and so he'll do what he can. All right, now let's look at specific cards. I want to make these videos relatively short, 15, 20 minutes. So let's look at just their base and silver prism. Let's start looking at their base prism. What's a base prism? Remember when the Flex was posting like 79 Luka Doncic base prism PSA 10s? I do. I have very fond memories of those times because I made buku money and tons of dollars buying raw, grading, and then flipping base 10 prisms for a bazillion, zillion, million dollars and then reinvesting that money into cards that really matter, like 90s Michael Jordan cards. But believe it or not, people are still buying the damn things. Look at the last 3 months of Anthony Edwards, Jaylen Brown, Luka Doncic, and Jason Tatum base PSA 10s. You're talking about, these are not low pop cards. Even 2016, before Panini hit the print until you die button on their printing presses, there was 1,018 base prism Jaylen Browns. That's a lot of cards, man, especially if you're like me and some of the people that watch this channel and you live in the 90s world. 1,000 cards is preposterous in PSA 10. But look at the Luka. We knew it was crazy, right? 20,087 PSA 10. Side note, we need to do a video on Wembanyama and how many of his cards there are. I have heard that there are more Victor Wembanyama graded cards with PSA Victor Wembanyama graded cards than Steph Curry cards, and Steph's been playing for like a decade and a half. I don't know if that's true or not. We'll do a video on that soon, but I think I saw that stat. There have already been more graded Victor Wembanyama cards than Steph Curry has for his entire career. That's nuts. Because, by the way, we're not even done with Victor Wembanyama's rookie year product. We're not even close. But looking at the base prisms, the Anthony Edwards started at 128 3 months ago. It's at 187. That's a 46% jump. Jaylen, about flat. Doncic, about flat. And then, of course, as we saw, Tatum, just disastrous, right? Again, we thought maybe he would kind of take the lead and be the man and be the clear-cut alpha on the team. He just didn't do it. He wasn't terrible. He just wasn't the clear-cut alpha. If we switch this to 1 month, which is a little more indicative, when did the playoffs end? Maybe 14 to 20 days ago. I'm not sure. I'm trying to remember. Over the last 1 month, and this is something that we see over and over and over and over when a player, and it might not be true for every card, but when we're looking at their base PSA 10, this is a flipper's card. No collector is looking to say, you know what, I gotta have a 20,000 pop Luka Doncic base PSA 10 in my collection. So we are talking about flippers flipping to flippers. That's what this is. It's a hot potato game. Nobody says, I gotta take this base PSA 10 Luka Doncic $195 card to my grave. It just doesn't happen. So this is investors selling to investors. It's just moving pieces around, right? It's playing chess. It's really like playing checkers, to be honest with you. Playing chess is collected in the 90s and collected vintage. Sorry, no offense intended. The only card that's even in the green is Jaylen Brown over the last month, and he was Finals MVP. He was Eastern Conference Finals MVP. He's the lowest pop, and he had the lowest starting price. And so he had a lot of things going for him when we're into this let's compare players from an investor perspective thing. Jaylen had everything going in his favor and outperformed, well, I wouldn't say outperformed Doncic or Anthony Edwards, but he got the accolades, got the awards, got the ring, and had the last laugh. And his cards are pretty much flat. So just like we've seen in the past, Jaylen wins a title the last month, ain't that great. Tatum wins a title the last month, not great, minus 16% on his base prism, down from 157 to 131.50. Look how many sales, right? These are just flippers just moving back and forth. 241 Luka Doncic base PSA 10s being sold. Who is buying and selling these things? Maybe it's people that had, hundreds of them from back in 2020. Maybe they just bought at the peak and they were just waiting for some time where something happens where I can just get the most I can get out of these cards that have been coming down so much over the last 2 years. If we pull Doncic up and we go look at Doncic over the last 2 years, this is what your chart looks like. It's going to look like everybody's chart. And we look at the same chart for Tatum over the last 2 years, it's the identical chart. If we look at Anthony Edwards, it's kind of a little bit different, right? Because nobody wanted base cards here, but at some point people did want Tatum and Doncic base cards. So Anthony Edwards cards are a little bit insulated because, from 2021 on, people already knew I don't need to be buying the base. But that's where we are on the base cards. Just to recap, looking back at it again over the last month, Jaylen sort of breaking even there, plus 5%. That's fine. Anthony Edwards, Tatum, and Doncic. Which of these guys, if you had to buy 10 base cards of one of these players, who are you buying right now given the prices that you see on your screen? Here's the value. Here's the price point. Doncic is still the highest at $195, but he's only $8 more expensive on average than Anthony Edwards, and there's 6 times the pop, 5.5 times the pop, something like that for Luka Doncic. If I had to buy one of these base cards, somebody said you've got to spend $10,000 and buy all base PSA 10 cards, and I can't diversify it and buy a little bit of each. I'm probably buying Anthony Edwards, even though I think Doncic is clearly far and away the best of these players. I think Anthony Edwards, when all is said and done, will end up being the second best player from a resume perspective of the players on here, and he's just got that it factor. Jaylen Brown doesn't have the it factor. He can't dribble. Jason Tatum doesn't have the it factor. He just doesn't, or he hasn't yet. I don't know where it will come from. I don't see much. I think he can add to his resume, but I don't see much he can add to his game. That's just me personally. So I would think Doncic is the best player. Anthony Edwards is the next best player. And then you got Tatum and Brown somewhere third and fourth. So if I had to put my money, I would put it in the Anthony Edwards. 3,846 base cards is still a lot. What about their silver prisms? I want to talk about their silver prisms. And so let's pull those up. Over the last 3 months, silver's doing better than base. That should not surprise you. There are fewer. There's still a jillion, million, zillion, but there are 207 279 Jaylen Brown, that's really not too much, right? Even, especially by ultra modern standards, there are 1,700 Anthony Edwards. There are 2,300 Luka Doncic. There are 874 Jason Tatum silver prisms. So he's somewhere in between Anthony Edwards and Jaylen, as expected. So because 2016 they just didn't hit that print button the same way they did in 2018, 19, 20, etc. If we're looking at the percentage change over the last 3 months, Jaylen is crushing it. He started at around $210 on average. Last sale, $360. So that's real money, man. I mean, you're talking about, what is that, about $150 increase. If you had 10 of these, that's $1,500 in your pocket, net taxes, shipping, fees, etc. You can make real money. I mean, you could have bought into Jaylen Brown 90 days ago and crushed it. The question is, Anthony Edwards up 30%. Luka Doncic is, believe it or not, up 11%. And Tatum Silver is up 1%. So we saw his base over the last 90 days getting murdered. His silver, PSA 10 silver prism, doing okay. That's speaking to the population. I think that the silver prism PSA 10, you are sort of starting to get a hint of collectors getting involved. Base PSA 10, only flippers, only investors. Silver PSA 10, I think you start to pique the interest of collectors who might want to start a collection of one of these 4 guys and say, you know what? Now Tatum's resume is there's a little firmer foundation. He's got a ring. He didn't get Finals MVP, but he's got a ring. Who's to stop the Celtics from winning the next one? They're still the odds-on favorite in Vegas. I know the Knicks did their thing with their little wing, in their Villanova team, whatever. They ain't winning shit. The Knicks ain't doing a damn thing unless Mitchell Robinson is perfectly healthy and is the next Bill Russell. Who knows? The Philadelphia 76ers may end up picking up Paul George. The Sixers could be a problem in the East if they move Tobias Harris, pick up Paul George, and do a couple of other little tweaks. And again, all of that hinges on Embiid staying healthy. That would form probably the best big 3 in the NBA, in my opinion. If you had a healthy Embiid, Paul George as your third fiddle, and then Tyrese Maxey, this up-and-coming, supernova phenom at the point guard position. But the Celtics look like they may do it again. So I think you start to see some collectors start to look at silver prisms. Maybe not the Doncic because there's so many. Maybe not the Anthony Edwards because there's so many. But 279 ain't that much. And 874 ain't that much for the Jason Tatum. That's not too crazy of a population. You stayed in the 3 figures. And so, even some old heads like me who like to dwell in the pop 10s, pop 12s, pop 50s, might start to look at some of the silver prism stuff. So this can be a hybrid mix of flippers, investors, flippers, short-term investors, and collectors as well. Start to take a peek at these types of cards. That's over the last 3 months. Jaylen by a landslide. Anthony Edwards flourishing. Doncic, okay. Tatum, even. If we switch this to a month, just since the finals ended, look at this. Isn't that crazy? Like we've seen with Mahomes, like we've seen with Giannis, like we've seen with Curry, like we've seen with Bubba LeBron. Winning a title doesn't necessarily mean, I get to cash in. No, the cash in point is before you win the title. And if we looked a little bit closer, at the Jaylen Brown graph, hell, this is the perfect graph, right? There's the Jaylen Brown over the last 3 months. It rises, it rises, it rises, it rises. He wins the title, right? Somewhere probably around June 13th. I don't remember when the last game was. Somewhere around here. And then look what happens. Every single sale is below that peak sale. And I bet if you made me guess, would the next sale be, is it going to get to 450 again? Is it going to get to 444? Is there going to be another sale at 444 before there's a sale at 250? I would say hell to the no. The next sale is more likely to be 250 than 450. That's the direction we're trending. Look at it. That's it right there. Hell, if we look at it over the last 2 weeks, look at Jaylen Brown. He's actually down 13%. That's what the graph looks like. And again, each card's different. You got to look closely at the card. You got to look at who sold it, what the rating is, what country they're in, what shipping. Well, there's a lot of other stuff to look at, right? So it's really tough when you got such a small sample size of 6 sales, 12 sales. But that's kind of what you're looking at right there on the chart. So down 13% over the last couple. And then you've got these sales here, obviously trending downward, 350, 340. So I know the graph looks flat, but it's really $50 down, which kind of means a lot when you're talking about a little little card like this. So winning a title doesn't necessarily mean big profits. I know I'm not telling you guys anything that's new there, but it's interesting when you look at the last month, and this might just be people saying, you know what, I'm moving on to football. You know what, I'm moving on to baseball. Things are starting to heat up. Aaron Judge is hitting home runs. Otani's hitting home runs. We got football right around the corner. I'm going to go waste a bunch of money on some bullshit prospect quarterbacks that are certainly not going to pan out. And so Jaylen has barely held his head over the last 1 month, silver prism. Tatum is down. Look at Doncic silver prism over the last 1 month. Man, people jumped on that. So that makes me think maybe there were more investors than necessarily collectors for sure on the Doncic, because down 40% is no joke. From 2,050 to 1,251, good night. That is a monstrous drop off. That's what the last 2 weeks of Doncic looks like. He's actually up over the last 2 weeks, but he's down 38% over the last month. That doesn't make any sense. Is that right? Let's look at this. There's the last month. Damn, that's weird. Well, this is interesting. Let's just put this on the big screen and we'll end with this one. What's happening here? This is Doncic over the last month. Down 35%. Down real dollars. 660. Down 660 real dollars. But look at Doncic over the last 2 weeks. Up $70. What's happening here? What is going on with that silver prism? Maybe that is the saturation point. We shall see. But looking at these guys, you got to put 10 grand in. Who are you dumping all your money into? I'm not going to make you buy base prism or silver PSA 10. I wouldn't do that to you. But who would you think is the best investment right now, knowing everything that we know, knowing what they've done in their career already, knowing how much risk there is with Edwards compared to Luka Doncic, who's got 5 All-NBAs, maybe having already seen the ceiling for Jaylen Brown and Tatum? Have they hit their ceiling? Are they approaching their prime, or is this the best that we can get from them in the Celtics moving forward? I don't know. Let me know where you would put your money in the comments below. Let me know if you're heavily invested in any of these guys. Like I said, I invested I want to say, I bought a sizable number of Jaylen Brown cards way back in 2016. I mean, I went, what I would consider back then very heavy into Jaylen Brown, bought raw, graded, sold, and made a fortune because it was just really easy back then. I'm not some genius. I was buying his silver prisms for like $12. I was buying his base prisms for, $2, $3, and buying lots of 30 and 40 of those cards, grading them, and then I waited a year or two when it was clear he was the real deal, and then I just started offloading them, right? So it could be done back then, but if you had to do that now, and I'm not going to make you buy the base prisms and the silvers that I was buying, but who would you put your money in? Anthony Edwards, Jaylen Brown, Doncic, or Tatum? I think it's unquestionable. I think Doncic is a transcendent historical player. He's going to catch a lot of shit because he doesn't play real defense. He was exposed a little bit in the finals for that. He was just facing, I think, a team that defensively they were so flexible, it just was apparent that it was going to be very difficult for Doncic to wear his team like a backpack and carry them to the NBA title. I just don't think I don't think it was a fair expectation of anybody. I don't think anybody could have done what had to be done to beat that Boston Celtics team. They just swarmed you and overwhelmed you with flexible defensive wing switchable players, and the dudes can play offense too. I mean, Drew Holiday was a disastrous offensive player for the Bucks those last 2 seasons, but when he's the 5th best offensive player on your team and there's no pressure at all to do more than he's capable of, obviously, he would have certainly not been the 5th best offensive player on the Dallas Mavericks. That's for damn sure. So I think it was just too much to ask for Doncic, but I'd put all my money in Doncic. Again, I own 2 of his cards, so it's not like I'm, pumping, dumping. I own one really nice black 1 of 1, and then I own a nice little, Mojo serial number 25 Prism, not a rookie card, fireworks card. So I don't have a lot of money in Doncic, but I used to, and did quite well on Doncic and Jaylen Brown. But the question is, can you do it now? I've shown you data that you can. If you buy their silver prisms at the right time, it can be done. And I'm not saying these are the 4 guys to do it on now, but let me know in the comments what you think. Who's another prospect that's out there that you guys are dumping your money into? Because I know you guys, I know your brain's spinning. I know you guys like these investor videos. And you know what? Don't tell me if you've got somebody. That's what I would do. I would keep that close to the vest. If you think you've got somebody out there, you think Cam Whitmore is the next guy, I would keep that under the vest. You think Anthony Simons is the guy, or one of these folks, or maybe it's somebody that got drafted last night in the NBA draft. Maybe it's Bronny James Jr. Maybe his cards are going to the moon. Let me know what you think in the comments. Actually, I should not have brought that up. Do not let me know in the comments what you think of Bronny James, because I don't want to hear good or bad. If it's good, you're full of shit. And if it's bad, that kid's done nothing to deserve it other than be born with that last name. So I don't want to hear any of the Bronny James stuff in the comments, but I know that's inevitable. I should never have brought it up. Thank you guys, as always, for watching. Keep collecting. Stay positive in the hobby. And peace.